This is an interesting paper that I'm going to summarize because the topic is really useful. We talk a lot about how dietary preferences of eating too much meat is bad for the environment. And I always argue that you have to track the portfolio and entire carbon footprint because, as usual, if you're riding a bicycle and not driving a car but eating lots of meat, you would be probably worse than somebody who's driving an SUV but is a vegetarian, let's say. Okay, so the point is you have to do uh, carbon footprint per person and imagine that at some point we will have certain budget for each one and they can fit whatever they want into it, which is much more sensible, especially if we can make it equitable and just and so on. So rich people have to reduce their footprint, poor people have to be allowed to increase their footprint and so on. But there is a completely separate question. If the attempt is to reduce meat consumption by providing plant-based meat as a healthier choice, then you have to remember the idea is to make the plant-based meat taste like the real meat so that people get a sense that they are actually eating meat. But then, what are the ingredients that go in? Are they really healthy? They are good for the planet, but are they really the healthier choice? Right? So these are critical questions. So obviously a lot of details, but I'll just provide you a simple summary. The global market for plant-based meat alternatives (PBMA) is expanding quickly. In this narrative review, so it's a meta-analysis of many papers published. In this narrative review, analysis of the most recent scientific literature was achieved to understand the nutritional profile, health implications, and the challenges faced by PBMAs. On the positive side, most PBMAs are good sources of dietary fiber, contain phytochemicals, have comparable levels of iron, and are lower in calories, saturated fat, and cholesterol than meat. Okay, that's the good news. However, PBMAs frequently contain anti-nutrients, have less protein, iron, and vitamin B12, are lower in protein quality, and also have higher amounts of sodium. To make things taste better, you always end up putting too much salt. Substituting PBMAs for meat may cause iron, vitamin B12, and less likely protein deficiency for these vulnerable populations, such as women, older adults, and individuals with disorders. PBMAs fall into the category of ultra-processed foods, another big debate, indicating a need to develop minimally processed, clean-label products replacing red meat with the healthy plant-based foods is associated with lower risks of cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, and total mortality. There is a lack of robust long-term evidence on the role of PBMA's consumption in health. As the nutrient contents of PBMA can vary, consumers must read nutrition facts, labels, and ingredient list to select a product that best fits their nutritional and health objectives. This is a good idea, but if you buy a product and look at the label, there are tiny prints listing lots of ingredients. Some of them you don't even know what the hell they are. Are you really going to be able to do that every time? Honestly, I don't even have the ability to read the small print anymore, so I will need a magnifying glass. So it's a difficult issue, but nonetheless we have to go through it. I'll read some introductory material. You got the main point that there are pros and cons, and we still don't know the long-term effect, because you can test nutrients and potential impacts on health in the near term with consumption, but when you keep doing this consumption of this ultra processed food for let's say you've been eating meat for 20 years and then you start eating plant-based meat alternative, and then 10 years later you realize maybe there is a carcinogen in it and so on. So You have to be always careful because we have ways of doing things with good intentions that have unintended consequences too often, right? The global market for plant-based meat alternatives is expanding quickly and is projected to be worth nearly $30 billion by 2025, and as predicted by the Union Bank of Switzerland, reach 85 billion by 2030. Unlike the first generation of meat alternatives such as textured vegetable protein in the 1960s, which were primarily geared towards vegetarians, the second generation of PBMAs are more technologically advanced and are made to appeal mainly to flexitarians and omnivores who want to consume less meat. So you love the taste of meat, but you want to reduce it either for your health or for the planet, whatever. This new generation of alternatives has arisen to imitate meat using proper structuring process such as extrusion and components obtained from legumes, grains and oilseeds to simulate the taste, texture, flavor, appearance and cooking experience of meat, the smell, the sounds, everything. PBMAs include products like burger patties, plant-based mince, sausage, meatballs, bacon, hot dogs, and a few others. So, though the constituents of PBMAs can vary, they commonly consist of 50 to 80% of water, 10 to 25% of TVP, which is the textured vegetable proteins like soya, 4 to 20% non-textured proteins like wheat, soy, pea, potato, rice, and or lupin protein concentrates and isolates, 3 to 10% flavoring, so spices, salt, and or hydrolyzed soy protein, 0 to 15% of fat, so coconut, canola, soybean or sunflower oil, 1 to 5% binding agents, wheat gluten, xanthan gum and carrageenan. Sorry, I have some frog in my throat for whatever reason. 0 to 0.5% colorants like beet juice, extract powder and or soya legumoglobin. I want to read this because, as I said, all these are put in small prints on the package itself, and you can hardly understand what they are, let alone figure out what their impact is on your health immediately and with long-term consumption. To closely match the nutritional profile of meat, vitamins and minerals naturally found in animal proteins such as iron, zinc and B vitamins can also be added. Thus, compared to meat, PBMAs tend to have longer ingredient lists while I haven't had breakfast. I don't eat breakfast, but anyway, that's a different matter. Well-known examples of PBMAs in North America are the Bleeding, Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger, produced respectively by Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat. I missed something here, so let's read it again. Thus, compared to meat, PBMAs tend to have a longer ingredient lists. Very good. Well-known examples of PBMAs in North America are the Bleeding, Impossible Burger, Beyond Burger, produced respectively by Impossible Food and Beyond Meat. So, Bleeding Impossible Burger basically gives you a sense of, some people love that red sense of bleeding red meat from real beef. So you want to give them the visual experience as well, I suppose. So we'll look at figure 1 here. I don't want to read all these other things. What is driving the popularity of PBMAs? Between a growing human population, a climate crisis and spread of diet-related non-communicable diseases and an unsustainable food system, the emphasis has shifted from an animal-based to a plant-based diet. However, the demand for meat consumption is expected to rise by 70% by 2050 as the world population is projected to reach nearly 10 billion. To avoid a global environmental catastrophe, meat consumption would need to fall by an average of 75%. You have to look at emissions, increase in meat demand, and then where we want to stay in terms of total emissions for meeting our global warming targets under Paris Agreement and so on. This growing demand exerts added pressure on an already struggling food system, as animal agriculture is resource intensive. We have talked about this elsewhere, so I won't go into it. Here is figure 1. Just look at plant-based alternatives versus the so two alternatives, Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger. Should I read all of them? Well, just for fun, let's do that. Water, pea protein, canola oil, refined coconut oil, rice protein, flavor cocoa butter, dried yeast, mung bean protein, that's the green gram, methyl cellulose, potato starch, sugars from apple extract, pomegranate extract, potassium chloride, yeast extract, beet juice extract, salt, sunflower lecithin, vinegar, concentrated lemon juice, and carrot powder. What vitamins and minerals does it give you? Niacin, pyridoxine hydrochloride, that's vitamin B6, thiamine hydrochloride, which is B1, riboflavin, which is B2, vitamin B12, folic acid, calcium pantothenate, biotin, zinc, sulfate, and ferric orthophosphate. So you get the idea. And ingredients in Impossible Burgers are also a long list. I won't go into the details. And some people, I guess, are allergic to soya, so it also warns you that it contains soya. Often people have allergy to nuts and so on. So ingredients are not always about just nutrition, but also allergies, food allergies, and so on, right? So sustainability is another issue. In terms of sustainability, PBMAs offer a more sustainable and environmentally friendly approach. For example, according to a recent life cycle assessment commissioned by Beyond Meat, PBMAs are anticipated to have less negative environmental effects than industrial beef production because the Beyond Burger emits 90% less greenhouse gases, uses 46% less energy, 99% less water, and 93% less land than a burger prepared from US beef. So you can compare per calorie or per burger, it doesn't matter. So this idea is already there, that these are going to be much more friendly to the planet and sustainability, so I won't read more of that. Nutritional profile and health considerations are another important thing to worry about. What is the nutritional profile globally? Since there are no established manufacturing guidelines for PBMAs, it's unclear how these products stack up nutritionally and how they differ from the products they aim to resemble, the real meat. Nevertheless, the ability of PBMAs to meet the nutritional needs of the animal food they seek to replace remains a top question. Therefore, this section highlights the most recent studies examining nutritional profile of PBMAs versus their meat counterparts. So that's how it is done, but obviously I've skipped a lot of the material that follows, which you can follow up with, because I'm just trying to give you a sense that people are worrying about these. Jumping ahead, overall, albeit there were some variations, the majority of the research found that PBMAs had significantly more fiber in addition to lower energy density, total and saturated fat, cholesterol, and a decreased protein content. In terms of micronutrient content, iron levels were found to be comparable to or higher than that of meat. However, vitamin B12 and zinc contents were lower. So obviously such detailed comparisons doesn't necessarily help individual customers. Somebody has to worry in the system to provide things that are safe, and that people who go from real meat to plant-based meat actually are not getting harmed. So it's impossible for individuals to track everything, basically, right? Summary of nutritional strengths and limitations of plant-based meat alternatives then. Strengths: considerably more fiber and lower calories, contain no or little cholesterol, most are lower in saturated fat, most have iron levels comparable to meat. There is a whole debate about dietary cholesterol versus body cholesterol, but let's not go there. Limitations: most contain higher levels of sodium, so salt is bad, blood pressure, and so on. Most have lower amounts of protein. Most contain low or little vitamin B12. You know what B12 deficiency can do. Most contain lower zinc. Zinc is an essential micronutrient. Most are lower in nutrients bioavailability, how well the body can absorb the nutrients from the food you're consuming. They are lower in protein quality and are ultra processed foods. So again, this is good to keep in mind, but if you have to struggle too much to understand whether you should switch or not, then obviously you'll need much more homework, or you will need FDA or somebody in your country to tell you that it is safe to switch and it's better for the planet, because you may be switching for purely health reasons or because you're worried about the planet as well, right? So coming to a few conclusions, PBMAs have emerged as a promising solution to the problems associated with industrial meat production and consumption. These newer and more advanced PBMAs aim to mimic the taste, texture, appearance, and cooking experience of meat while doing so sustainably, ethically, and without the public health concerns associated with the animal-based proteins. And so this point is an additional point, right? They are done ethically, so many people may be just not happy eating meat because they feel plants don't feel anything, so it's okay to chop them down and consume them, whereas animals, you can see them suffer, especially in the way the meat mass production industry works. So that's an angle that many people worry about as well. However, are plant-based meat alternatives the healthier choice? That's a critical question. Given the nutritional advantages and disadvantages of the reviewed PBMAs, there is no straightforward answer to these questions besides the fact that they can be, as it depends on individual PBMA products and their ingredients and the frequency of their consumption and the quality of other foods in the diet. So basically, you are doing something, replacing meat with some of PBMAs, then you may be following recommendation on taste or nutrition, so you're pretty much on your own at this point. In terms of nutritional strength, most are lower in calories, saturated fat, and cholesterol than animal-based products they resemble, and are a source of dietary fiber which has been shown to improve health status. PBMAs can provide food groups like legumes, which are frequently lacking in people's diets, as well as nutrients like PB protein. Although PBMAs often have a lower protein quality and tend to be low in certain essential amino acids if plant proteins are not combined, protein deficiency is rare in developed countries. Anyway, let me leave it there. Moreover, the majority of have iron levels that are comparable to those of meat, but iron in plant foods but iron in plant foods has a lower bioavailability than their meat counterparts. So how well the body can take up the nutrient is also an issue. And this is another point here, saving and transporting fresh vegetables, legumes, or whatever can be tricky. There are frozen products as well that you can buy, but these PBMAs are probably easier to transport and store. Okay, the nutrients bioavailability in plant foods are lower due to the presence of some anti-nutrients. Other nutritional setbacks include lead, zinc, and vitamin B12 than meat. Additionally, they contain higher amounts of sodium than their meat counterparts. Since the nutritional profiles of PBMAs can vary from one product to another, to select a product that best fits the dietary and health goals of the consumers, it's crucial to read the nutrition fact labels and ingredient lists of PBMAs. Do you already do that? Hardly ever, right? Ideally, it's wise to select PBMAs that are comparable in protein quality and quantity, lower in salt, saturated fat, and cholesterol, a source of fiber, and equivalent to or greater in the key micronutrients found in the products they intend to displace, such as iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. Finally, nevertheless, the market for PBMAs is rapidly growing, and companies are investing heavily in research and development for their improvement. While challenges still exist in terms of taste, texture, price, and nutrient profile, the growing interest in investment in PBMAs suggests that they have the possibility of becoming a mainstream option for those looking for a more sustainable and ethical way to enjoy the taste and texture of meat. Overall, PBMAs show the potential to revolutionize the food industry and act as a stepping stone towards healthier plant-based eating patterns, while providing a sustainable and ethical solution to the challenges associated with the industrial meat production and consumption. Okay, so meat consumption has been a part of our culture for a long time. We were hunter gatherers, and now the questions are obviously varied in terms of nutrition, worrying about ethical treatment of animals, and equity, access to nutritional foods for all, and of course worrying about the planet and our impact on the planet, footprints of our meat consumption. Agriculture is about 25% or more of the total emissions, so there is an overall need to reduce emissions from agriculture and enhance the natural sinks as well. I have discussed this elsewhere. So plant-based meat is a special part of it. I have also discussed in detail how to make the food industry overall more sustainable or less emitting. So this fits well mostly because we have to also worry about whether they are safe for our health. Okay, so I hope it's helpful. Go back and read the paper if you are interested in more details, because I tend to skip a lot of details to provide a brief summary. Okay, see you in the next topic.